There's only a few electric vehicles I would ever consider, primarily because almost every electric vehicle either looks the same, they're ugly as sin, you need to plug in and recharge every 200 miles or less. That's why today I'm going to share a list of a few of the electric vehicles I would only personally consider buying. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
Here's the first car that I would actually consider buying. We had one on loan a couple of years ago and I was very impressed, but it has to be very specific. It has to be the dual motor or the long range version. It gives you up to 310 miles on a charge, and that's like 500 kilometers. It also starts around $44,000, so it's not extraordinarily expensive, and it also looks somewhat attractive. I mean, the only downside is most electric vehicles, they don't have the personality like a lot of internal combustion vehicles. The modern grills just aren't there, so things look very futuristic and simple. But at the end of the day, the rest of the vehicle is well nicely styled. Great headlights. This redesign of the Tesla Model 3 looks great. Of course, you get the usual variety of different style of wheels, all the video surveillance you need. Sometimes you get the large glass on top, cameras every which way, retractable door handles, and of course LEDs. You'll notice the restyle of these vehicles, they look sharp, but it's the dual motor that offers blistering performance. 0 to 60 you're down in the sub 5 seconds. You can get extraordinarily long mileage, and they're fun. They're easy to own, and again, as I say, very affordable. Will they ever replace an internal combustion vehicle? Probably not. How about a plug-in hybrid? Well, a plug-in hybrid can get you a lot of the benefits for a lot of short city trips, and will give you the opportunity to get out on the open highway with your gas engine and never really be stuck anywhere. If you're doing a lot of shorter trips and you want to actually have some fun, these cars are a lot more fun than they look. The long range are the ones to get. Of course, there's the Plaids and all of those great models. They just bump up the performance levels, but then they bump up the price tag. This is the sweet spot. The base range, the standard range, doesn't get you quite as many miles, and of course it only has the single motor. This is definitely one of those vehicles I would certainly own. It just meets all the criteria other than the rumble in the pants that you get from a great V8. Here's one that you would think, this affordable, fun, they look great, but you have a Fiat 500 right here. Now the 500 comes in an E format, which gives you an electric drive, and of course it's almost exclusively the same. The vehicle, whether an electric format or an internal combustion vehicle like this one here, are almost more or less the same vehicle, other than obviously you've got a tailpipe here. Even the price is definitely agreeable. I've seen lots of these 2017s, 2016s for as little as $8,000 to $10,000. There's even one right now with very low mileage in the classified, so I thought I'd give it a look until I realized that they have an 85-mile range. You think of where that's going to get you. That barely gets you to the local airport and back, and you'd have to charge again. Even though they handle well, they're sporty, they're definitely one of those vehicles that almost have too much torque for the front wheels. They tend to rip apart. Now the plus side, of course, it's a plug-in 120-volt charger. You can have it charged in basically 24 hours, so it's somewhat practical, but basically its entire existence is going to be one in which you're charging it for the whole time. And on top of it, it doesn't have an auto shut-off like a lot of modern day vehicles today, where you actually switch it off at a certain percentage, 80, 90, 100%. This will keep charging like your cell phone and won't stop, and you can ultimately burn out the battery long term. So the Fiat 500e, even though it looks like great value, you know, and it could be, if that's the cheapest vehicle you're looking to get into the electric vehicle space, the Fiat 500e as well as the Mitsubishi MI-EV, of course, are the two vehicles that are very, very cheap, but not really the value add there. You can't go anywhere with them. Here's one that I've always really enjoyed. I've gravitated to this Volvo model. I'm not a big fan of Volvo as a brand, but this particular model strikes me as very, very nice. It's very similar in size as a Volkswagen Tiguan or the Audi Q5 or even the Q3, but you get the great headlights, you get laser cut wheels, and look, you get extra detailing on the hood. When you compare that to some of their competitors, it's a little bit more simplistic. These vehicles, lots of nice detail here, more details, creases, protection here, lots of nice, the indentation there just gives it extra flair. Look at this beautiful design right here. There's a nice hump over here, and it's a nice size, because I truly believe if you're driving an EV, why would you want to drive an absolute tank like the Hummer when all you're doing is push around extra weight? But these vehicles are absolutely great. Now here we have an XC40, but the new version called the EX40, and of course that's the new nomenclature for some of these models. You get the great detailing on the back here, and you get a 79 kilowatt battery charge here. You can get it rear wheel drive or all wheel drive as an upgrade. Now with the all wheel drive system, you're going to get about 260 miles. With the rear wheel drive, you get about 293 miles on full charge. In the all wheel drive format, give you 0 to 60 in about 4.1 seconds. Blistering performance. It's attractive, absolutely quiet. I've driven these vehicles and they're they raise the quality and the ride quality at yet another level. They're beautiful. They have all of the modern tech and the safety features and the designs that you definitely fall in love with. These vehicles are gorgeous, and if there's one Volvo that really draws me in, it's the XC40 and EX40. Of course, in Volvo's format, you do get the beautiful tail lights. That's consistent for the brand. You get lots of functionality, lots of space in here for 5 seats, and all of the space you possibly need. And yet, like I said, not a whole lot extra, because you get great technology, you get sunroof, you get beautiful designs. What else do you need? At the price point of $52,000 to $62,000 base to all-wheel drive trim, it's actually relatively affordable when you compare it to even the Tesla Model Y, which gets a little bit better range. This brings up the quality and the feel interior-wise vastly better than you're getting from Tesla. So that's the trade-off. You give back a little bit of mileage, but you get a lap of luxury. You feel like you're riding in something of better quality and more substantial drive. It's also great that you can one-pedal drive. In other words, there's enough dynamic braking. When you lift off to the throttle, it'll slow down almost completely to a stop on its own. You can virtually just drive with your throttle pedal on and off. The other thing is, with a charge from 10% to about 90%, it only takes about 45 minutes, and as well, you can get a 240 volt or the DC charging input available for this vehicle. It's flexible, it's versatile, it charges quickly, and it's fun to drive. Now, the next one here is one that's not as affordable, but relative to the price of some of the supercars that it will absolutely demolish, is the Tesla Model S. The long range, which has great performance, is good for over 400 miles of charge, and on top of it, 0 to 60, now you're in the sub 4 seconds. Get into the Plaid model like this version here, and now all of a sudden you're in a vehicle that can crack 0 to 60 in 1.8, 1.9 seconds. Blistering performance, blows the doors off any hypercar, and the long range can be had for $85,000. And the vehicle like this with the Plaid, you'll notice the logo here gives you 1,000 horsepower, and this vehicle here can be had for about 100 grand. Now, nobody's pretending these are affordable, but when you think about the level of performance that you're getting, and this is why this is one of those I would buy. To me, the value is there, and to many people, the value is there, either the long range or the Plaid. When you consider this will eat most Lamborghinis, this will eat many McLarens, this will beat many Ferraris, and yet you can do 400 miles plus of range. You can haul your family, you've got 4 doors, you've got 5 seats, great performance, one of the strongest charging networks around. There's no question in my mind the fact that these ones you can get with the yoke steering wheel or with a regular steering wheel. You can upgrade wheels, you get red calipers on these, all kinds of great camera systems. Of course, you can monitor the health of your vehicle. On top of it, you also have these flush handles that pop out. It's a good looking car. Some of these have that little wing, and it's very, very attractive. Now again, this isn't base model cheap, but when you consider the value and the performance as well as the economy, and every time you step into it, you don't have to watch the fuel gauge drop down. The Plaid and the long range vehicles by Tesla are a couple of those I would easily own, and I've driven them and they were absolutely breathtaking. The Plaid truly is a sucker punch in the gut and will take your breath away. Definitely the Model S, long range and Plaid. 85 and 100 grand. Small price to pay for that level of performance. Here's one I'm going to mention as an example of why would you ever spend that kind of money on some of these cars. Here we have a Mercedes-Benz. This is an EQE. That's literally the face only a mother could love. Yeah, you would literally feed this with a slingshot. I did a review on one of these a couple of years ago over on 6-Speed Car Reviews, the EQE, and there are some benefits, but to buy them used is amazing. You can get this for 50-60% off of its original value in 2 or 3 years. That's why it's an honorable mention, but it's not one I would buy certainly new. They're just way too expensive. You do get all-wheel steering, all-wheel drive. You get great technology, the latest and greatest from Mercedes-Benz, but it is not a good-looking vehicle, and it's extraordinarily priced at $75,000, $80,000 US. Here's an EQE 500. Of course, it's 4MATIC, gives you the all-wheel drive as an upgrade. And even worse, the one I want to mention is the EQS, which is the most premium version of this. Crest the sticker price over $130,000 US. The worst part is if you buy one brand new, you're going to lose 50% after 2 years. And so clearly buying one of those just really makes 0 sense. The front just looks absolutely horrid in my own personal opinion. The way they drive is great. They're wonderful. They have decent levels of performance, but even when you compare it to some of the premium versions of Teslas, it doesn't compare in terms of the overall acceleration and the fun factor. Doesn't look as good, and certainly in my mind, the value isn't there. The tech is nice, but the rest of the packaging clearly not worth the big price tag. As a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old used version, maybe something to think about. Here's a Ford that I would definitely consider buying. Here's one I would recommend, and I actually test drove one here last week, and I actually kind of liked it. Feels like a little bit like a Tesla Model Y, but it's different. It's got more spice and more sport to it, and it has all the practicality. What I noticed was the one we drove was the base electric drive, and of course it didn't have the full output. It didn't have the GT, but it did give you the all-wheel drive, which allowed you to use it for winter time. It had all the practicality. You have 5 seats, you have a big trunk space, all the tech that you need. It has all of the style. I love the whole rear taillight assembly of the Mustang. Here we have the Mustang Mach-E. Now, that being said, many people consider it a bit of a joke, and I kind of do as well in a lot of ways. It has a bit of an identity crisis in the fact that they should have never called it a Mustang Mach-E. They should have called it some unique model. But as a standalone, we know there were some problems with sunroofs, there were some problems with early tech, and there's still an outstanding recall for doors that sort of lock you up, and that's an unfortunate reality of a lot of this modern day technology. But overall, I actually didn't mind it. It drove fairly well. It actually looks very, very sporty, and I think from the looks perspective, it looks better than most of the other EVs. Now, granted, it would be nice to see an open grille, but it does have a bit of a style to it. It doesn't look like every other electric vehicle on the market. 3 times the better than a Tesla Model Y. Now, the performance isn't spectacular. At $40,000 for a brand new one, you can get as much as 240 to 200 miles range on this vehicle, so it definitely makes it agreeable. You can use it for everyday use. You can even take some relatively decent trips with these vehicles. But again, you know what? 350, 400 kilometers on a charge, you're going to be stopping every few hours to charge it, like just about every vehicle. That said, this is one because of its looks, style, performance, and even the tech that's on board. This is one I would definitely look at buying. And a vehicle like this in the EV market just doesn't make any sense to me. Ford F-150 Lightning and GM's got one, and almost every manufacturer's coming out with an electric vehicle that is a pickup truck. But the problem is when you're driving trucks, you're loading it down, you're putting more weight on it, and all that extra weight tears down at the battery, eats up the capacity. And unfortunately, a lot of times when you're driving trucks, you like to go long distances, whether it's to the cabin or doing work jobs or contracting work, and you're towing a trailer. All that extra weight, that burden, and the distances that you would travel just is not conducive, in my own personal opinion, to driving an electric pickup truck. I get it, a lot of people like that versatility, but the fact is a lot of these vehicles simply do not have the working capacity or the longevity or the batteries to actually do the work effectively. Even the CEO of Ford admitted that maybe a plug-in hybrid might even work. Maybe go back to internal combustion engine and not necessarily give up on other ICE drivetrains. And what we're seeing in, of course, the North American market is a sort of halt and slight retraction on a lot of these vehicles in the first place. And now, as a result of high prices, tariffs, and the increased price of a lot of these, the sticker prices, and the fact that you can't go anywhere, just means that I don't want to pay 120 grand for a truck like this, and I still can't use it as the truck was intended. A lot of these electric vehicles are clearly better for driving around the city, doing shorter trips and errands, but unfortunately trucks just don't seem to meet the criteria for me, and I don't want to be driving downtown and parkades and short little trips in a full-size truck like this. It's a lot harder to use, it's harder to park, and quite honestly, for the sheer value and price of these vehicles, I'm not sure it's worth it. Now here's one that's more of a bucket list car. Certainly if you won the lottery, it would definitely be worth it, because these range anywhere from 100 grand up to about $210,000 US. You can get GTS, 4S, all kinds of turbos, Turbo S, all kinds of variants of this. And we're talking about the Porsche Taycan. Yes, great detailing, like this beautiful light bar at the back, this 4S model right here. This is an absolute gorgeous car. I love these. Every time I see these, I'm thinking to myself, I need to have one of those. Unfortunately, it's not for everybody, and certainly I can't even afford it right now either. However, like I said, for lottery winnings, this is the best that you can get in the EV market. I would definitely buy this 100%. If I had the money, I'd throw it down on such a car. This is absolutely spectacular, and it's true to everything that Porsche does in the performance. It's not just goes fast in a straight line like, say, a Tesla Model S Plaid, but it absolutely handles like it's on rails too. It's got great brakes, beautiful headlights. It's quite different than a lot of the other models, so it stands out. But there's a lot of great features. Base model, 0 to 60, 5 seconds, 3.4 in the 4S, 2.3 in the Turbo S, and the Turbo GT gets you 0 to 60 in 2.2 seconds. That's just a couple ticks slower than the Tesla Model S Plaid. But it also has the 800-volt charging architecture right there, which allows you to charge very, very quickly. It's a DC charge, 270 kilowatt or 320 kilowatt, depending on the particular model and the size of the battery. Of course, onboard AC charging charging is also available with speeds depending on that particular power source. So there's lots of flexibility in how you charge it, how quick you charge it, and how you enjoy these. You can get these fastback, hatchback looking design like this. You can get the full-on sedan. But whatever you look for, you're guaranteed to get a great performance car in this Porsche Taycan. And again, you're not going to get the sound. You're not going to get the 911 flat six. And that's truly what I love. I love the flat six sound. That's something that can't be replicated. But if you will have to have your cake and eat it too, this might just cut the mustard. The Porsche Taycan, definitely for the win. And with all of that said, maybe you don't have the money for the brand new one, but you know the depreciation is absolutely demolishing. In 2 or 3 years, you can see 50% depreciation. Why are used electric vehicles so cheap? Right there, check it out. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon. See you then. Bye-bye.